Hi, welcome to Deep Recaps. Today's film is the suspenseful 2015 thrill ride, Green Room. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Pat, Tiger, Sam, and Reese are the four members of a punk band called The Ain't Rights. They're from Arlington, DC, but at the moment they're out on tour through the Pacific Northwest. As is the case with most modern bands, these guys get themselves from A to B in a rundown van, and they are, well, flat broke. The movie begins as Pat wakes up, disoriented. He's in a van that appears to be surrounded by corn? Their driver, Tiger, looks up and yawns, asking if they crashed and revealing that he fell asleep at the wheel. He also left the engine running. The van is dead, so Pat and Sam take a bike to the nearest facility to buy some gas. Just kidding, they're going to siphon it. Don't forget, these kids are punk. Sometime later, they arrive in the next town. A local radio host and concert promoter, Tad, throws the band the keys to his apartment and heads off to work. The group checks out Tad's records, makes fun of Tad's hair, and eventually passes out. Pat falls asleep first, and naturally, wakes up with marker all over his face. In the morning, when Tad gets home, he conducts an interview for a college radio station. The band claims that they're looking to record soon, if they can afford it. When asked what their desert island band would be, they all name famous punk icons. Tad asks why they're not on social media. Reese claims that booking more shows would blow. Tiger states that selling more records isn't hard rock. And Pat concludes that taking things online would result in a loss of texture. The band is about the live show, existing in the moment. Energy is transient. They're broke, but they wouldn't have it any other way. Tad then reveals the awkward truth. The show he was promoting, the one they're in town to play, has been canceled. However, he offers them a backup gig. A headlining act, he says. The show, of course, is a bust. A small cell phone-wielding audience and a $6 payday for each member. Reese threatens Tad, and Tiger sarcastically calls him Jiu-Jitsu. Tad offers them another gig, this time through his cousin. That night, as Tad sees them off, he warns them not to talk politics during the show, and to play their heavier stuff. As they drive, Reese decides to open up to Pat. He wants to tell him something he's never told anyone. The following morning, the Ain't Rights arrive at the venue. Tad's cousin Dan greets them and immediately displays violent tendencies. They realize they're opening for an NSBM band called Cowcatcher. NSBM stands for Neo-Socialist Black Metal. This is a political movement within the metal scene that promotes neo-Nazism and white supremacist ideology. In other words, they're scary, and so is everyone in the audience. In the green room, before the show, Pat pitches that they open their set with an anti-Nazi song. Immediately, the crowd turns on them, throwing bottles and spitting beer. But as the set goes on, they find that moment that they all exist for, and just for then, everything is all right. Afterwards, a bouncer named Big Justin shuffles the band out in a hurry, but Pat heads back to the green room to retrieve Sam's phone. Unfortunately for everyone, he stumbles right into the middle of a murder scene. In a panic, he calls the cops as he attempts to flee. However, the goons quickly round the band up and immediately begin arguing about what to do with them. The promoter, Gabe, goes to get a gun. The band is ushered back into the green room and told to be quiet and relax. Gabe insists the cops are coming, but until then, no one can leave. An anxious Sam suggests that the girl might not be dead. One of the thugs, Worm, responds by pulling the knife out of her head. The tension builds immediately. Outside, Gabe has a plan. When Pat called the cops earlier, he reported a stabbing. So, one of the town's true believers agrees to shank his twin for a couple of bucks to put the cops off the trail. Arriving at the same time is the club's owner, Darcy. Back in the green room, Gabe tells the other band to clear out. Worm tells Pat that their second-last song was hard. It's the one he went and did some murder to. For a psychopath like Worm, this is actually a pretty sweet compliment. When they clear out, Reese immediately challenges Big Justin, but Big Justin levels a big-ass gun at Reese's head and lets them know he's having none of it. Meanwhile, Darcy and Gabe discuss how bad the situation is, and how many people could spread word of the murder. Darcy is shown a bag of gasoline canisters and tubes in the back of the band's truck. Darcy arrives outside the green room and calls in to Big Justin to hand the gun over to the band and come outside. Suspicious because the police haven't arrived yet, Reese decides not to let Big Justin go. Tiger makes a run at BJ and gets laid out, but Reese proves his nickname has a cool origin story and does some martial arts to restrain the big man. Amber, a girl who was with the other band but was left behind, barricades the door with a couch. Reese eventually lets Big Justin go, but holds the gun on him. Outside, Darcy realizes the plan has gone south. He says to his men that they'll do it here and stage it up the road. He goes for a walk around the premises to inform his Nazi pals of the plan. In the green room, Reese tells Justin to turn out his pockets. Justin reveals that he has a cell phone, but immediately breaks it in half. Just then, the lights go out. Amber unsheathes a lighter and pops a cigarette into Big Justin's big mouth. She tells Reese to fire if the cherry moves too fast. Darcy takes the stage to apologize about the power outage and ushers the bulk of the crowd out the door. A group of Nazis wearing red laces remains behind. Darcy then returns to the green room to speak with Pat. He pleads with them to open the door, stating that all he wants is the gun back, which he claims is unregistered. The cops, he says, have come and gone, but they're free to go. The band, understandably paranoid, deliberate for a time. They propose that Darcy trade them a cell phone for the gun, but Darcy, predictably, refuses. Out of options, Reese does the jujitsu thing to Big Justin again, and Pat moves to the door to return the gun. Amber ensures that Darcy takes a step back, and Pat, anxious as all hell, opens the door. Suddenly, Amber notices a fleet of red laces through the vent and cries out that they're here to kill them. Tiger and Sam attempt to throw the door shut, but it's too late, and Pat's hand is yanked through the crack. Eventually, they manage to pull him back inside, but his arm has been maimed. Reese puts Big Justin in a sleeper hold, but a rattled Amber decides that it is too risky to have him in the room, and kills him. A short time later, the band gets to work digging their way out. Reese takes a mic stand and breaks through the floor, and the band drops into a cellar. They noisily try to punch their way out through a hatch, which is a stupid idea, if you ask me. As Tiger heals Pat's arm with the magic of duct tape, Pat tells everyone a motivational story about a game of paintball. They gather weapons and cut him off before the story reaches a conclusion. As they prepare for the end, some of them admit that their desert island bands wouldn't be punk after all. Sam says Simon and Garfunkel, and Reese says Prince. Then they throw the door open wide and are surprised to see nothing. No one is waiting for them. Boldly, they head for the exit. However, when they reach the main room, one of the red laces releases an attack dog, which proceeds to eat Tiger. Reese manages to find a window, which he quickly throws himself through, but another of the red laces is waiting for him outside. Inside, Sam is almost grabbed as well, but uses a fire extinguisher to knock the man back. In a moment of punk rock ecstasy, Amber fights a dog with a microphone as it feeds back loudly through a monitor. Pat, Sam, and Amber return to the green room. Before long, Tad's cousin, Dan, breaks the door down with his crony. They don't seem interested in the survivors, though. Instead, they want to know who killed the girl, Emily, in the first place. Amber reveals that Worm did it because Emily was planning on leaving, and without Dan. It is revealed that the two of them were planning on defecting from the Nazi movement, which makes Daniel a traitor. He's with the band now. Daniel is about to reveal a helpful secret to the group, but then he gets shot in the face. Pat manages to put his attacker down with a machete. The three walk outside, right into the waiting arms of Professor N and his school of mutants. Sam looks badass with a shotgun, but unfortunately she cannot aim, and the dog claims its next victim. Pat and Amber again return to the green room. Pat tells Amber that he can't die here with her. She tells him not to then. She wants to hear the rest of his paintball story that ended with him cowering behind a wall while everybody else fought. His team had been up against a group of Iraq war vets. They were tactical and had expensive gear. So, his friend Rick, knowing it was hopeless anyways, ran in guns blazing. And he took out their whole team. That story sounds made up. The thugs and their dog head back into the club. Suddenly, feedback starts to course through the place once again, and the cute little pup decides he'd rather be free in the woods than eat any more punks. The thugs re-enter the green room. Pat is there, decked out in war paint, and he dives back into the cellar to make some noise. While they're distracted, Amber crawls out from under the couch and takes one of them out. Pat waits around the corner for the other, in the only place he could be, really. But still, the shotgun goon walks right into him. As they struggle on the ground, Amber picks up a discarded weapon and saves Pat's life at the last moment. As they leave the cellar, they come across a saddened Gabe, who is shocked to see them alive. He appears to have had it with all this Nazi nonsense, so he cooperates with the two. Together, they all wander out into first morning light and push on into the forest. They hear gunshots in the distance. Knowing that they've killed his friends, Pat decides he's all in. Together, he and Amber get the jump on the remaining thugs, who are in the process of staging a crime scene. They discover that the plan was to make it look as though the Ain't Rights were killed by guard dogs while trying to siphon gas for their van. Finally, they have Darcy dead to rights. "It's funny," says Pat. "You were so scary at night." Darcy attempts to make a last stand, but it's pointless. Pat and Amber come out victorious. We see Gabe going to the neighbors for the police. We see Tad vacuuming his apartment while the interview he conducted plays over the radio. And we see Worm eating sketchy cereal in his sketchy apartment. Pat finally decides on his desert island band, but Amber could care less. The message of this film is all about thinking for yourself. In the end, Darcy's soldiers failed because they looked to Darcy for all of their answers, whereas Pat and Amber finally learned to make their own decisions. Green Room is lightning in a bottle. The way the acting, the soundtrack, and the cinematography all come together to make you feel as though you've just stepped into the wrong bar, right alongside the Ain't Rights. Subscribe for more content like this, and leave a like to help support the channel. See you next time.